Okay, so now we have all of the sphere groups added and parented correctly and oriented in the right spot. Now we need to grab the first child actor component and set it to rotate. The easiest way to do that is going to be to put all of these in an array so that we can operate on them all at once. So I'm going to come over to my variables, hit the little plus sign there, and I'm just going to type in child actor component. I'm going to set the object type to child actor component. There we go. And then over here in the details panel with the variable selected, you may sometimes have to compile before you get this option. We're going to set it to an array, which is just a list. So we're just going to have multiple instances of child actor component objects that we're going to be storing here in this variable. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it in, and we'll hit get. I'm going to pull off from the array and type in add. We'll select add here from the array, and I'm just going to slot this in. And what we want to add is the object that's created with this add child actor component. So this is the child actor component, essentially the empty group that's between the two spheres. The other one that we create is over here. So we can give just a little bit of room there. So now I have all of these in an array, which I can operate on. So I'm going to create a custom event. We'll add a custom event. And I'm going to call this one rotate spheres. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy in. We're going to do a get on that. But before I do anything with this, I need to create a timeline. Timeline's very, very useful. Available to actor blueprints. Give it a name that means something because it's going to show up over here as a variable. Now what you can do with the timeline is open it up. I'm going to click this plus track button here. You can add a float track, vector, event, and color track. So event is actually super useful. I'll show you that in a second. But what I use most of the time is a float track. So now I've got my float track. I'll give it a name. We can call this one sphere rotation. I'm going to right click and select add key. And then some other place, I'm going to right click and add a second key. Highlight the first one by just selecting it or do a click drag. I'm going to set the time to 0 and the value to 0. So that's going to put it over here in this corner. If I zoom out a bit, you can see that it's sort of a light gray up until 5. That's going to be 5 seconds. And that's determined by this value right here. I'm going to set this to 3. We'll select this keyframe here. I'm going to set the time to 3 and the value to 1. So I want this to be a linear curve without any ease in or ease out. But if you did want ease in and ease out, you can right click and select auto and you'll get that transition. But again, I want this to be linear. So I'll just add one more thing here. I'm going to add an event track and we'll call it hello. And I'll just show you how that works. Go to the view, event graph. So now that I've done that, I have two new output here. I've got my sphere rotation, which is going to be a float, and I've got my hello, which is going to be an execution pin. So now that I've got my child actor component array and my rotate spheres timeline, I'm going to pull off and type in for each. And I'm going to pull off from update. So you want to make sure that the timeline is not inside the for loop. We want to be iterating over everything on each update through our timeline here. So now I want to pull off, set rotation is what I'm looking for here. Set relative rotation. And then out of sphere rotation, this is going to give me a value from 0 to 1 every 3 seconds. Oh, I need to press this button right here, which will make it loop. So we're going to go from 0 to 1, 0 to 1, 0 to 1 over and over again every 3 seconds. So I'm going to pull off of this and type in multiply. And we're going to multiply this by 360. So this will give us a nice slow rotation, 3 seconds for rotation, a full rotation. I'm going to right click on this and split the struct pin. And I think it's going to be Y, but we'll know in a second here. Actually, no, it's Z. Sorry, Z is the up vector. Okay, that should work. Let's take a look. Oh, I need to call this a rotate spheres. That needs to be connected over here. There we are. So the first thing we do is we generate our spheres, and then we'll call the rotate spheres event. Cool, huh? So we're just rotating each one of these groups around its local z, and that's the effect. But they're all rotating at the exact same rate, right? What I want to do is I want to give it a little bit of an offset per generation. So we can make this a little bit bigger. And the way that I want to do that is I want each sphere generation to be rotated a little bit further to begin with. So I'm going to pull off from the array index. This is going to be an integer. The first time we run through this, the first child actor component that we're operating on is going to be the 0th index, and then the first and second and so on. So we're going to take this and we're going to multiply it. Initially, we'll just pick a low number, like 5, and then we're going to add it to our rotation. So pop it in like that. Let's go ahead and compile and save. And so now you see we're starting to get this really interesting weaving thing happening, right? So that's with a 5-degree offset where each generation is pushed 5 degrees further than the one before it. So if I bump this up to like 30, compile and save, you start to get something that looks like this. So each generation here is offset 30 degrees from the one before it, and we get this really nice helix pattern. The last thing I want to show you in this video is this event thing here. So I'm just going to make a new event. Call this event hello, and we'll just print hello. So what I can do is I can actually trigger an event in the timeline. And this is really, really useful for like triggering Niagara system to begin or to end at a certain moment, right? So like say you've got a track driving an emissive to get really bright, and then at the point when the emissive is the brightest, that's when we want to trigger the explosion or something, right? So this is a way that you can do all that kind of stuff. You can also do this same general thing in a sequence. It's just a little more complicated because you can't get the exact moment in the blueprint when something else might be happening. So in this case, we just have one float curve and one event, but you might have 5 or 6 of these things and everything is coordinated to be working together. And so it's nice to be able to trigger events directly within a timeline. So let's go ahead and just see if this works. What we should see, I'll open up the output log and clear it. We're just going to get a little hello. It may print it up here like a couple seconds in. There we go. So anyway, that's just a convenience that you also have access to when working with the timeline. I just wanted to make sure that's something that you're aware of because it is very, very useful for a lot of things. Okay, in the next video, we're going to take a look at how to set up the color.